A young woman lay in a mass grave 6,200 years ago, her skull not only eternally carved into a distinctive cone shape, but shattered by a powerful blow. This is the story of BG-112, whose bizarre life and violent death echo across millennia. Why did she receive this deliberate cranial transformation as a child? And did that same shape make her death easier or inevitable? Archaeologists are piecing together clues from her bones, her burial site at Chega Sofla, and the evidence of tragedy etched into her skull. Her death was not just violent, it was intimate, immediate, and final. Today, we untangle ancient ritual from possible violence and consider what this tells us about early human communities, how they lived, how they mourned, and how they buried their dead. And perhaps most hauntingly, how they may have turned beauty into vulnerability. Deep in southwestern Iran, on the windswept Zoreh Plain near the Persian Gulf, the Chega Sofla Cemetery was uncovered, a vast Copper Age burial site used between about 4,700 and 3,700 BCE. Here, the dead were entombed in mud brick graves, some with grave goods, others stripped bare by time. Over more than a decade, the Zoreh Prehistoric Project, led by archaeologist Abbas Moghadam of the Iranian Center for Archaeological Research, documented dozens of human remains, unearthing not just skeletons but social patterns. Among the many interments were several skulls with elongated shapes, pointing to a consistent inherited tradition of cranial modification. The excavation also revealed evidence of long-distance trade and regional interaction, with pottery styles linking Chega Sofla to other important prehistoric sites in the Iranian plateau. In a groundbreaking study published May 22nd in the International Journal of Osteoarchaeology, researchers Mahdi Ali Rezazadeh and Hamed Vahdati Nasab of Tarbiyat Modaris University focused on one skull above all, a young woman designated BG-112. Her remains were incomplete, only a skull and a few associated fragments, but what those fragments revealed would ripple through the fields of bioarchaeology and cultural anthropology. Their goal was more than academic. They hoped to reconstruct her biography from bones, to trace the rituals that shaped her life, to understand the trauma that ended it. They brought modern imaging techniques, osteological assessments, and anthropological frameworks to bear on a mystery thousands of years old. BG-112 wasn't born with a cone head. Her transformation began early in infancy, when her caretakers tightly bound her head with cloth or boards, a method seen across many ancient cultures. Over years, as her skull bones remained soft and pliable, this pressure redirected growth, forming a tall, tapered skull that stood out even in death. Cranial modification was neither random nor cosmetic. In many societies, it symbolized nobility, spiritual purity, or ethnic belonging. It was as much a social signal as clothing or language. For BG-112, it may have shaped how she was seen, treated, or expected to behave within her community. Modification may also have been hereditary, a family tradition passed from mother to daughter. But modification came at a cost. CT scans revealed not just shape, but structure. Her outer cranial bone had thinned significantly, and the diploe, the spongy layer between outer and inner bone, was barely developed. Her skull was aesthetically altered, but also structurally vulnerable. Researchers compared the density of her bone to other remains from the site and found hers notably more fragile, especially near the left temporal region, precisely where the fracture later occurred. Then came the trauma. A sudden, massive impact left a large triangular fracture running from her forehead to the left side of her cranium. The wound was consistent with blunt force trauma from a wide-edged object, perhaps a stone, a mace, or a wooden club. It cracked both outer and inner bone, leaving no chance of survival. There were no signs of healing, meaning the injury occurred either moments before death or was the cause of it. According to the study, an intense force delivered by an object with a wide edge impacted the skull of this young woman during her final moments. Alirezazadeh clarified further. We know this woman experienced the fracture in the final moments of her life, but we don't have any direct evidence to say that someone intentionally struck her. Whether the blow was deliberate or accidental remains unresolved. Crucially, another skull at Chega Sofla, this time unmodified, was also found with a similar fracture. This suggests that the violence was not necessarily linked to the cranial shaping. Bone fragility might have made BG-112's injury easier to inflict, but it wasn't the sole cause. She was buried in a communal grave, a pit shared by multiple bodies. No complete skeleton was attributed to her, only her distinct skull. With no femurs, teeth, or vertebrae positively identified, forensic insights into her age, health, or nutrition are limited. Still, her trauma tells a story all its own. Archaeologists note that her grave lacked grave goods. No tools, no ornaments, no offerings. Was this typical of the time? Or was she denied such objects in death due to how she died? Alternatively, could the absence reflect the nature of communal burials, where individuals were not commemorated but deposited collectively? Cranial modification is one of humanity's oldest and most enigmatic body-altering traditions. Across ancient Peru, Central Asia, and Africa, it signified power, beauty, or spiritual elevation. To reshape the head was to shape identity itself. In Chega Sofla, it appears to have been voluntary, or at least normalized, practiced across generations. Yet the modified and unmodified were buried together, not segregated. This suggests a community that tolerated or even embraced difference, where skull shape didn't define hierarchy or privilege. It may indicate that the modified were not elite, but simply part of a broader cultural mosaic. But the presence of fatal trauma complicates the narrative. Was BG-112 the victim of interpersonal violence? A ritual accident? A societal punishment? Was the injury inflicted in war, in ceremony, or in panic? We may never know, but her death underscores how fragile even sacred symbols can be. Alirezazadeh and Nasab's study opens new doors for understanding the intersection of body politics, violence, and identity in early civilizations. Further work at Chega Sofla, especially using isotopic analysis, genetic sequencing, and burial stratigraphy, could reveal whether BG-112's fate was unique or common. Did others with modified skulls face similar risks, or was her death a singular anomaly? As more of Chega Sofla is excavated, new patterns may emerge. Burial spacing, trauma distribution, and artifact placement might yet uncover whether this was a peaceful community punctuated by tragedy or something more sinister. This singular skull invites a broader question. How often are cultural practices misinterpreted in archaeology as merely symbolic, when they may have carried hidden costs, social, medical, even lethal? Even the story of BG-112 has only begun to be told. BG-112's skull stands at the crossroads of ritual beauty and bone-shattering violence, a fragile sculpture of identity, shattered in a moment we cannot fully explain. Her story reminds us how ancient humans shaped their bodies, their beliefs, and their dead, and how sometimes the most haunting truths are left in bone. Stay with us for more uncoverings from Chega Sofla and beyond. If you crave vivid, recent science that peels back time's layers, subscribe, because the next discovery could rewrite everything we thought we knew about the past.